Hello, what is a text, students and teacher? My name, as I'm sure you know, is Jackson Tarpley, and I'm here today to present my final manifestation of my multi-genre project. Now, my entire multi-genre project was based around Kenneth Burke's theory of terministic screens. I've always been a big Kenneth Burke fan, but specifically, his article on terministic screens really spoke to me. Now, his definition of a terministic screen is a screen composed of terms through which humans perceive the world. Now, I want to stop real quick and focus on one particular term in that definition, which is the word term. Kenneth Burke says that specifically terministic screens apply to just words, and that's it. And that's where my theory differs from Kenneth Burke's, is that I actually think that Kenneth Burke is not thorough enough, which may shock you, but he's not. Another way to say his definition would be maybe words, that contain a specific message, which shapes how others interact with that word. Now I want to draw on the two types of terministic screens that Burke talks about, because I think, once again, he's scratching the surface here to something brilliant. And the first type of terministic screen is a scientistic screen. Now, that's your basic definition, your definition screen. That's just your definition-based interpretation there. The next type of screen that Burke touches on is the dramatistic screen, and this are screens that push audiences toward action. And drawing upon one of our favorite articles, I'm sure, as English majors, Lloyd Bitzer's Rhetorical Situation. Drawing upon that, we would know that an audience's reaction or an audience acting on an exigence is one of the most important things, and in my opinion, the most important part of the rhetorical situation, because if your audience is not moved to act, your discourse is pointless. So, what I set out to realize, or discover, if you will, is that different people's experiences culturally, socially, psychologically affect how they perceive the world around them. And it's more than terms. It's more than language itself. It's an experience. Now, how I was going to show different people's experiences was interviewing actual friends of mine who are immigrants or have very, very close immigrant relatives, such as their mom and dad, and talk to them about different definitions of words. One that comes to mind that I talk to them about would be citizen. Now, of course, in our westernized definition of citizen, we tend to jump toward the materiality aspect of citizenship, such as driver's licenses, passports, and social security cards. But what we don't realize is just the base definition of being in a society or being in a culture. That could mean something totally different in the Eastern world, or even in a country that's not ours, or heck, even in a country that is ours. It all has to do with different cultures and different experiences. Another term would be human rights. There is no one definition of human rights, and I feel like we've been told that time and time again. But what I want to discover is that, what are people's interpretations of human rights? And is there a similarity there? And if not, why? And that is the question. So through these interviews and through the language and through the questions that I'm asking, I'm hoping, and I know that by the end of this project, we will see that Kenneth Burke, in fact, just touched the tip of the iceberg on terministic screens. He didn't go deep enough, but that's what I'm here to do.
All right. My name is Jonathan Wakinjala. I am a junior at Florida State University. I was born in London, England, and I moved to Tanzania when I was only 6 months old. From Tanzania, I lived there for a couple of years, along with my parents and my two brothers. My one brother was born in Ukraine, and my other brother was born in Tanzania. We immigrated to the United States in 1998, and I grew up in a household that was mainly of Tanzanian values.
Being from a country like Tanzania and living there and really growing up in a Tanzanian household, as you would call it, when you talk about words like citizen and citizenship, how different is that in a Tanzanian setting and with Tanzanian values as it compares to American ones?
Well, I'll give you 2 points kind of about Tanzania to start it off. So Tanzania, the leading newspaper is called Mwananchi, which is Swahili for the citizen. And what that really kind of represents is that Tanzania really does believe a citizen isn't something legally defined, as it is more here in the United States. More than anything, a citizen is just a Tanzanian. He is a person who will contribute back to the society and at the same time also accepting help from society. So it's a give and take. A citizen is simply someone who continuously gives and is continuously also accepting things from the people around him. So something like just basic means of behavior. The other point I want to make about citizenship and in Tanzania is that dual citizenship is actually not legal in Tanzania, which is strange, you would think. Dual citizenship is legal here in the United States. You're allowed to be a citizen in the United States in another country. But in Tanzania, in order to be considered Tanzanian, you have to be only Tanzanian. You can't hold a citizenship in any other country. And that's because it's seen as a privilege to be a Tanzanian, and it's not just something you could just define as on a piece of paper. So I wouldn't say that being Tanzanian made me define human rights any way differently, but I would say having parents who had global exposure made me define human rights differently.
Hi, my name is JC Martinez. I'm a junior at FSU, a biology major. My parents are immigrants from Cuba. They came in the early 80s in what's called the Mariel, which is the time span that Fidel Castro allowed Cubans to freely leave Cuba. My parents have a different view, or their views have changed since they've come from Cuba. They had a different understanding of human rights and freedom. Freedom's different over there in the sense that you're not really exposed to the outside world. You kind of have a controlled freedom, if that makes sense. You're free to do what you want inside the country, but you don't really have any understandings or any output from the outside of it. It's like you're living in a world of just that country. And it's just recently, because of technologies and media, that they've broken past that barrier, because there's just really no way out of it.
So in that sense, do you think maybe it was a little easier to adjust to the cultural differences when being in a town like Miami?
Yeah, it would, simply because there's so many Hispanics, and primarily in Miami there's a lot of Cubans. So a lot of the religious stuff and the social stuff, like the norms that you see in Cuba, they were a lot brought over from the island. So it's very easy to just, find your way through society and just become comfortable. My dad thought it was really weird how the cars are all different, because all the cars now in Cuba are from the 60s, and when he came over it was the 80s, so the cars had changed dramatically. The architecture and the buildings, they're all completely different. He found people having a lot of money besides high officials. He saw that to be weird, because he saw, at least especially when you come to Miami, a lot of people have a lot of money, and you just see $100,000 cars driving around, and in Cuba it's not like that. Everyone has a beat up car unless you work for the government. Even me, I hear different words in Spanish that I just don't understand, and they mean things that you use every day. So I would imagine that it was really hard for my parents to come to the United States fresh, really young, and just having to learn a whole new language.